Algebra 2 Honors Cram, Study Skills Practice. Flashcard 9, Multiply expressions containing I. Skill Practice 2.6-22. Alright, before we get into the card, the imaginary number I is a number such that I squared is equivalent to -1. And because no real number exists such that its square is equal to a negative number, the number I is not a part of the real number system. Obviously, if I squared is -1, I, which is the square root of I squared, would be equal to the square root of -1. Okay? And the values of I to the n, whether it be I to the first, I to the second, I to the third, etc., they repeat after every 4 powers of I. So let me demonstrate what I'm talking about. Well, here we have I, the square root of -1. Square that, you get I squared, which is equal to -1. I to the third is equivalent to I squared times I, which is going to be negative square root of -1. I to the fourth is equivalent to I to the third times I, which is the negative square root of -1 times the square root of -1. When you evaluate this expression, it's the same thing as saying 1, okay? Because the square root of -1 times the square root of -1, or the square root of -1 squared is -1 times another -1 is going to give you 1, okay? All right, let's get into the problem. Okay, so this is the expression that we're going to simplify. We're going to use the FOIL method, but before we get into that, we have to understand that the set of complex numbers. Okay, so this is the expression that we're going to multiply out, okay? But before we do this, the set of complex numbers is a set of all numbers written in the form a plus bi. So this would be our a, -3/4, and our bi term would be 1/2 I, okay? Where a and b are real numbers, so although it's a fraction, it's still a real number. And the term a is called the real part of the complex number, and the term bi is called the imaginary part of the complex number. And you have to understand that when operating with complex numbers involving I, combine like terms, okay? Well, we can't do this yet because we're performing multiplication, but when we get down to either addition or subtraction, we're going to combine like terms, and we're going to treat I as a variable, such as we would x or y, even though it's a constant, okay? So in order to figure out the answer, we're going to use the FOIL method, which means multiplying the first 2 terms, the outside terms, inside terms, and last terms, okay? So let's demonstrate what we mean by FOIL. So the first terms multiplied by each other are going to yield 1/16. 1 times 1 in the numerator yields 1 in the numerator. And 2 times 2 2 times 8 in the denominators yields 16, and we're also multiplying by I, so we have to include that. Now we're going to multiply the outside terms, okay? So 1 times 3 in the numerator yields 3 in the numerator of the product, and 2 times 8 in the 2 times 4 in the denominator yields 8 in the denominator of the product, but we also have I times I, which is I squared, and remember I squared, as I showed you in the title card, is really -1. So we're just going to multiply by -1 or write in the negative sign without writing in the entire -1, okay? So that's that. That's the nice thing about having I squared. You just simplify it into -1, okay? Now we're going to analyze the inside terms. 3 times 1 in the numerator yields 3 in the numerator of the product, and 4 times 8 in the denominator yields 24 in the denominator of the product. And we have this negative sign, so we have to include it, okay? And now we're going to multiply the last 2 terms. So we write down our negative sign first, and 3 times 3 in the numerators yields 9 in the numerator of the product. 4 times 4 in the denominators yield 16 in the denominator of the product. And we have our I, we're multiplying by I, so we have to also write that down, okay? And when we finally combine like terms, we're going to yield negative 1/2 minus 1/2 I. So for the A term, negative 1/2 came from adding negative 3/8 to negative 3/24. And in order to do this, we had to scale up our 3/8 by 3 in the numerator and 3 in the denominator. So we basically we wind up with adding negative 9 plus 3 in the numerator to get 12. And then, we have our common denominator of 24. And negative 12 over 24 is really 1/2. So that's why we simplified to 1/2. Now for the last two terms, we have 1/16 I plus negative 9/16 I, and we wind up getting negative 8/16 I, which is really simplified to negative 1/2 and then I, okay? So this is our final answer. All right.